discussion on a very interesting book about Hyderabad, which is possibly the most happening city in the country today. Dinesh has written this very interesting book and gave it a title, Beyond Biryani. By the way, all of you guys are going to get biryani after this, and copies of the book are available. You'll be very happy to autograph them, and you collect your packet of biryani. May I now request our colleague, Mr. KP Nair, to introduce our panel. Thank you, KP.
Okay. In my very long career as a journalist, this is the first occasion when I am on a podium or on a panel where panelists, with whom I share my writings, I mean, with Venkat, we worked together in the College Times in the 1970s and 80s. I used to write for the College Times. So, our writing, sharing of our writing platform goes back to that time. And both Madhavan Narayanan and Dinesh Sharma, I share the New Indian Express platform with Madhavan Narayanan. We both write for that newspaper. And with the author Dinesh Sharma, we both write for the Tribune. So this is an occasion for me that is somewhat unique, and I am extremely happy about this coincidence. The author Dinesh Sharma is an award-winning journalist, author, and media trainer with nearly 40 years experience in reporting on science and technology, health and environment for national and international media outlets. His latest book, which we are going to discuss today, Beyond Biryani, The Making of a Globalized Hyderabad, has been published by Westland. For his book Outsourcer, the story of India's IT revolution, published by MIT Press in the US in 2015, he was awarded the prestigious Computer History Museum Book Prize instituted by the American Society of Technology in 2016. He penned a science travelogue, Witness to the Meltdown, based on his climate change reportage from the Arctic in 2008. Another book, Indian Innovation, Not Jugaad, is about 100 innovations that have transformed India in the past 75 years. Dinesh's academic experience includes teaching a course in development journalism for MA students at Ateneo de Manila University in the Philippines, and being a teaching fellow at Jawaharlal Nehru University. He holds a doctorate from Banaras Hindu University, and is a postgraduate in communication and journalism from Osmania University. Dinesh has been the science editor at Mail Today and founding managing editor of India Science Wire. He's a regular contributor also to the famous medical journal, The Lancet. My old friend Madhavan Narayanan is an editor, journalist, writer, and columnist with more than 35 years of experience in both Indian and international environment. He has worked for media organizations and publications, including Reuters, the Economic Times, and in some of those media outlets we work together, Business Standard and Hindustan Times. Narayanan has featured as a commentator on BBC Radio, ET Now, and Mirror Now, and writes regularly for The Quint, The Economic Times, The New Indian Express, and beyond. His recent ventures with partners include Knowledge Factory, an annual festival of insights and ideas. He also translated a 1980 Tamil novel on the Chennai film industry by acclaimed writer Sujata Rangarajan into English, which has been published by HarperCollins India. Thank you.
Thank you, KP. Congrats on your book, latest book, Dinesh. Hyderabad is my old city. That's where I went to college. I have found memories of the city. And in March this year, we did a discussion on Bangalore, unboxing of Bangalore. And it's only right that we are now doing a discussion on a very interesting book on Hyderabad. You spent 5 years as a meticulous research, very well written and unputdownable, as one if one could put it that way. Uh, this 400-year-old city has fascinating history. I think Dinesh is best suited to tell us about his book, why he chose this subject, how long did it take, and what all kind of work that went into putting this book together. The stage is yours, Dinesh.
Thank you, Venkat, for the nice introduction. It's always a pleasure to be at FCC. I'm nostalgic because I was a member when I was representing Bangkok Post for a few years in the late 90s, and I was a regular member. And of course, I've been coming here very often. And the last time I was here was for another Hyderabad book by Professor Afsar Mohammed of UPenn, and we had a discussion. And I'm very happy that FCC has become a forum for discussing new books, and I must compliment you for this, because I believe this is the third book discussion this month, if I'm not wrong. So which is very fortunate that because we need to talk about books, because authors do want a forum, and I'm so fortunate to be surrounded by three seniors, and Venkat was my super senior in Osmania University, journalism department. Maybe I was just born at that time in the 60s. And of course, Madhavan, I worked with him in ABP group for some time. And Business Standard, I was in Telegraph. So we shared another platform in Telegraph. I mean, I was too junior at that time, so don't recall. Yeah, true. So, oh yes, a lot of them were there. So it's nice to be among seniors and talk about my new book. And of course, Venkat is a fellow Hyderabadi, and he has done a very pioneering book on NTR, and which is the time that is one subject that brought Hyderabad to national, kind of limelight. Because the other day we had this formal launch in IIC, and Sanjay Baru mentioned that he came to JNU in 1974, and one of his colleagues, classmates, asked him that you are from where? So he said Hyderabad. So the person got a bit perplexed. Acha, you mean Madras? So from that age, where everything south of India was considered Madras, and everybody coming from there was a Madrasi. I mean, that was 1974, and JNU, you can imagine the situation. So from that point to a situation where we are talking of Hyderabad as a globalized city, the reason which I took up this subject was multiple reasons. Of course, one is I'm a born Hyderabadi, and I spent first 30 years of my life in Hyderabad. I was educated and I worked there. So that sort of familiarity of the place, personalities, institutes, and is there. But that was not the reason enough to take a venture like this. What I found was that, of course, one is that 2014, Hyderabad became the capital of the youngest Indian state. So it gave it a new political and cultural identity. There was a kind of a revived interest in the city that, because being a capital of United Andhra Pradesh was different than from becoming physically. It is located in Telangana and it became capital of Telangana state. So that gave it a new identity. And there has been a revived interest in anything relating to Hyderabad. So that was one reason. Other was there are a lot of myths and misconceptions about Hyderabad, like with any other city. You acquire an identity over a period of time, the name recall, all those things happen. So those misconceptions were there. But somehow I was also figuring that, Hyderabad is coming back in public discourse in different contexts. For example, in the political context, in the recent Maharashtra elections, also Hyderabad figured in some ways. And of course, people remember it for pearls, Charminar, and Nizam's jewelry and wealth. And so all that, and those things were also coming to people in different formats, what I call the social media literature. So some of those things were also there. So that's what I thought, there's a bigger story. And not that Hyderabad has not been written about. There have been political and cultural and other kinds of writings on Hyderabad. But the central question which I wanted to address was from being a Hyderabadi and living away from Hyderabad, that gave me a critical distance to look at my own city, although I've been going there very often. But every time one goes there, you find a new change happening. I mean, I'm sure you would also feel that. And that change was so rapid. So that kind of gave rise to a thought that why is this so happening, and are we am I missing something? So personally for me, it was a project where I wanted to answer this curiosity of mine, that is there something larger, or is it just the same story which we hear about liberalization and things like that, So that's how I started looking at the city. And I thought it was a story, a success story, which we needed to tell the rest of India. I mean, people know about Hyderabad. It's not same what Baru felt in 1974. But again, Hyderabad is always, when you talk about technology sector, Hyderabad is always clubbed with Bangalore. I mean, in a way, one can analyze that they had similar trajectories, but at the same time, they have a different path of development, and they have grown in different ways. And where else in India you would find a greenfield city which has come up in 30 years, which I'm referring to Hyderabad. So it's a completely new city. That's a change which we have seen in our own lifetime. So I thought that was a story which needed to be told. And when I started looking at it, then I thought it is not just this one. What you're seeing today, it has a longer story. And that's how it got, extended to a story of 100 years. So it's a story which spans roughly a century. And I've tried to bring in a lot of micro histories and institutional histories and people and personalities. So it's an amalgamation of all that, basically to answer the question of Hyderabad, which we see today, how it has traveled this distance. So I'll stop here. Maybe I can interject later and after Madhvan has
I'm glad
had his
Venkat
thoughts.
asked the question. Good evening, everybody. And Venkat,
I think you have to press something. Green it should be.
it should be green. Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm glad Venkat asked the question that I thought of asking as to how the idea of the book came about. But before this session began, we were having a cup of tea in preparation, and I told my fellow panelists, that my biggest challenge today is going to be to shut up, because I'm so excited about this book. It worked, as they say in human resources, it was above and beyond my expectation. That uh, there's a lot I want to say. I can talk non-stop for an hour, but I won't. I threaten you, but I won't carry out my threat. I'll be hopefully brief. And let me begin by saying that it's an awesome book, and everybody should read it. And I'll tell you why. Because Dinesh, being a very good writer and researcher, is also, like many old school people, very soft in his style of speaking, which kind of hides the real power of this book, which should come out. Lots of things jump into you when you read this book, like a thriller in some ways. That's how I read it. So congratulations also to publisher VK Karthika, because this is the kind of stuff that you will remember decades later as something that you can be proud of. So congratulations to Dinesh on that. But let me begin by saying this morning I got by a coincidence, a WhatsApp message from my friend Anu Acharya in Hyderabad. She's a biotechnology entrepreneur who runs a company called Map My Genome, which is a genomics company. And Genome Valley figures in Dinesh's book, if in case you didn't know. Uh, interesting thing today, this morning, is that she's written an article co-authored an article in Nature magazine about the genetic patterns that enables longevity in Indians. Nature is, as you know, the world's most prestigious science magazine. And here is somebody from Hyderabad writing about it. And article says, unveiling the secrets of longevity in India. So I was almost humorously thinking, when I read this book, I said, although Beyond Biryani is a very nice title, it kind of doesn't reveal the real power of what all is there in this book, because there's a lot of science and technology in this book. So I thought, with a sense of alliteration, that this book should have been titled From Biryani to Biotech, or from biryani to blockchain, which is going to change everything so in a revolutionary manner that you probably heard it from me today. Because 10 years from now, you'll probably buying and selling property the way you forward WhatsApp messages. And somebody, I'm sure, is working on blockchain in Hyderabad, because although it's kind of assumed now in today's Hyderabad, full of science and technology. So, and biryani, this book is as relishable as biryani. And I was thinking the best way to work up an appetite is to look at what I call the alphabet soup that you can begin with. Alphabet soup that gives you, there is an abbreviations and acronyms chapter, which gives you everything. Center for DNA Fingerprinting and Diagnosis, CDFT. Council for Scientific Industrial Research, of course, CSIR. National Institute of Nutrition, NIN. If you want to know about what's happening to diabetics, NIN is there in Hyderabad. So there's so much of science and technology concealed in this alphabetically confusing alphabet soup in Hyderabad that Dinesh has researched all these is itself is a tribute to the kind of depth this book has. And if you have any doubts, you can go to the bibliography section that shows that he's not just Dinesh Sharma, he's Dr. Dinesh Sharma. But the interesting part, which brings me to, let me add two personal notes here. The first one is that Dinesh and I are of image. I am a South Indian who grew up in Delhi, in Lutyens era, and he grew up which still had the British colonial hangover in many ways, in a positive sense also. And Dinesh grew up in Hyderabad, which still had the Hyderabad Nizam's worldview and habits and practices, along with British colonialism. And therefore, we have childhood memories tied up with what is called modern India, because there is a history to it, there is a continuity to it, there is a modernity to it. And this book should also be seen as a work, a fairly authoritative work of modern Indian history. This is that's my second point. Third thing is something that I'm delighted to announce today, that Dinesh Sharma is not a science journalist. He's a historian in his own right. He should rank up there with William Dalrymple and, Veera Mukhoti or my friend Manu Pillai, who are all doing popular works of history. Let's not lose sight of the historian in the way we are looking at it as a work of science and technology or journalism, because the introduction to this book is called Biryani and Backroom, which is a mini book in itself on the history of Hyderabad. It's as enchanting as some of the more readable stuff you come across. Then it goes into a lot of the more science and technology stuff, which gives us a gravitas that one would require. That's another point I want to make. A third point I want to make is that Dinesh is a gifted storyteller. The research and the bibliography and the alphabet soup conceals his ability to tell a story in visually evocative terms. More on that when we probably discuss this book further, because as I told you, I'm restraining myself. So there is a storyteller's angle to this, which I was fascinated by, because I was looking at this book through various prisms as I read it. The fourth angle was is two personal memories, which I have associated with a very core part of this book, uh, which is about the latter day. In fact, I skipped some of the 1990s portion because I was part of that whole revolution. I was spending 5 years as a Reuters correspondent in Bangalore when some of the stuff happened, and Hyderabad was part of my coverage zone. Let me say that I had the small privilege or news. I was the one who broke globally the story of how Microsoft was going to set up its first R&D fully fledged product center outside of its home base in Seattle, and that was in Hyderabad. It was a big story then, accidentally blurted out by a vice president of Microsoft. I had the sense to report it, and it became a big thing because Microsoft only had a small lab in Cambridge in the UK, and Hyderabad was a big center for that, and therefore I have a personal connection. Then I went to Hyderabad when Bill Gates was visiting Hyderabad, and one of the forgotten trivia, which may not figure in this book, is that Hyderabad's public school, which used to be called Nizam's College, has given us today Satya Nadella, who's the current CEO of Microsoft, Shantanu Narayan, who's the CEO of Adobe. So therefore, it's more than a coincidence. This book will explain why this is not a coincidence that you have two global technology CEOs from Hyderabad, because there's a whole history to it, which is what Dinesh covers. I have a personal memory, which is actually a bit indulgent, but fascinating slice of life that there's no way I can not recall it, which is that circa 2000, around 2000, I was in Hyderabad. I went several times there as a correspondent. It was a CIA conference, Confederation of Indian Industry Conference, and it was a month of Ramzan, which is very important for Hyderabad. And there was a dinner party at the Falaknuma Palace, which is one of the most picturesque spots in India. You had this lovely white, it was a moonlit night. And it was very surreal and beautiful because I bumped into Srini Kopulu, who was the Microsoft's head of center in Hyderabad. He was, I think, explaining to me at that time, if I'm not mistaken, what was the significance of Hyderabad for Microsoft. It's not very well known that Sun Microsystems was the biggest network computer software giant at that time. Later got acquired by Oracle. Oracle also figures in this book, by the way. But my small quibble, Dinesh, with your book is that you talk about BPO, or call centers, as a stepstone to the scientific rise of technology. But my own Microsoft story shows that by spotting Hyderabad as an R&D key product development center, Hyderabad was already recognized in some way. So Hyderabad's Texas Instruments in Bangalore, Quark in Chandigarh, and Microsoft in Hyderabad were the early trendsetters in what is now fashionably called global capability centers. So they were not cheap body shopping or cyber cool stuff. This is advanced engineering happening in Hyderabad. And what I was discussing in the Falaknuma Palace that day was how this is very, very interesting, because Unix is a wonderful software program, but it was running big, giant-sized computers. And as you all know, Windows makes it easier for us to use visually easy computing. What Microsoft did in Hyderabad was to migrate a lot of network software based on very Unix kind of language into a Windows environment. So I remember Srini Kopulu telling me it's Windows through Unix. He even waved his hands like that. And there was Halim cooking in the backdrop. Lovely breeze blowing, a lovely city stretching out in front of us. We were viewing it from atop the hill. And there was a stage in which there was a girl in a white sharara singing Chale Aao Saiya Rangile Mehari, which was a song from Bazaar, which is about Hyderabad. So where else can you find Bollywood and history and science and technology and Ramzan and good food all coming brewing together. And that's a lovely mess. So there are a lot of slices in this book which would remind me of that night. We will discuss that later, but I wanted to bring all this together to show how fascinating it is. I'll stop right there. Venkat, what are your Hyderabad memories? You know, we will, with every alphabet in this soup requires a morsel to be severed.
Yeah. Every time I go to Hyderabad, I find something which I did not find on my previous visit. And I stay in a hotel in Abbots, which I used to patronize since my college days in Nizam College and all that. So when I stay in the hotel and ring up the room service, instinctively I speak in Telugu. But I realize the guy who's talking to me doesn't know Telugu. I said, "Where are you from?" You'll say, "I'm from Nepal, or from Kolkata, or from Odisha." It's very interesting that it has really become a global city in the sense people from different parts of the country are there. And if you go to Cyberabad, you have people from different countries and all that. It's absolutely
I'll
fascinating.
pick a bone with you, but in a very fascinating way.
Yeah.
Hyderabad was globalized long before the word globalization happened. In fact, that is why you should read this book. You should go back to the Qutub Shahi dynasty. You had Persian, Turkish, British, and apart from that, eclectic Indian influences from across religions, across parties coming. And this is a fascinating way of understanding a teeming Hyderabad. It's a pity that the crowd here is not that big because there's a big smog in Delhi. And I was thinking that maybe because people don't want to step out of their homes, they will be smoking a 100 Charminars if they hit the streets. Charminar used to be a popular cigarette brand in India. And this book also contains the history of the Charminar and how Sir M. Visvesvaraya actually modernized it. So, in a sense, globalization of Hyderabad in a cultural and intellectual sense began with a lot, which is why I said I'm going to stop because there's a lot else that is there in the book that I can spew out or dig out. So let me ask, so now today you have Nepalis, even in Chennai today, I was served filter coffee by a Nepali. Went next door to meet another friend where I was served Assam chai by a girl from Meghalaya. And I couldn't find a room in a hotel I was trying to check in where the no was told to me by an OB. So that's Chennai for you, and Hyderabad is very similar because it's attracting what quote unquote called immigrant or migrant labor, localized migration, thanks to economic growth. And the thing that I want to ask you, Dinesh, because this is something that I was trying to, because this is where I'm going to play some table tennis with you, Dennis. Tell the audience, many of whom are watching online, 3 or 4 things about Hyderabad and things that they would expect to find in this book that they are unlikely to know. If you tell me, let me compare it with what my own list.
No, one, of course, you talked about globalization and the process. What is globalization? It's inflow of ideas, inflow of talent, and inflow of people. And that process began a long time back, starting with mid 19th century with Agarnath Chattopadhyay. I mean, famously father of Sarojini Naidu. That's how Sarojini Naidu was born in Hyderabad. So Agarnath was teaching chemistry in Edinburgh, and when Salarjung I went there, he wanted him to come and do something in Hyderabad, and that's how we got the first inflow of modern education in Hyderabad and what later became Nizam College. So the teaching of science in a modern way began with Agarnath Chattopadhyay coming from Edinburgh to Hyderabad. And then Syed Hussain Bilgrami from Lucknow was teaching in college there. So he got English teaching there. So the ideas started coming. And later on, as you mentioned about Visheshwaraya, it's very interesting, which I described. By the way, there's a beautiful biography of Visheshwaraya, but this particular episode is not there.
Yeah, just to clarify, Charminar was built in the Nizam era, but Visheshwaraya modernized the environments of Charminar. just the way Microsoft built Windows over Unix, Vishwesvaraya built a very, you know, 20th century kind of Hyderabad on top of the earlier Nizam Charminar without
Charminar,
spoiling its
yes,
aesthetics.
Charminar was the Qutub Shahi period. Then came Asaf Jais, to which the
Yeah.
Nizams belong. So he was the trigger was the 1908 flood, in which 40% of the city was flattened. So, and there was a lot of Hyderabad was not ruled directly by British, but there was a lot of British influence. So,
That's what.
most of the big departments are headed by Britishers. So, Syed, Sir Akbar Hydari was one of the secretaries who was heading the department. So, and there were other British officers, and so they thought of getting Vishwesvaraya, who had just taken retirement from the British service, and he was yet to go to Mysore to serve, to become Diwan later on. And at that time, Vishwesvaraya was holidaying in Europe for 4 months. So when he got the telegram and it was given to him, so he was interested because everybody knew
There's
that.
a lovely poetic quote from Vishwesvaraya.
yeah.
I told you, I'm getting excited about the book. I won't.
So Nizam's wealth and everybody wanted to come and work because they got higher salaries than the British. So Vishwesvaraya was interested, but he said, "I'm not going to come right away. So I'll finish my holiday, continue, and then I'll come to Hyderabad." And meanwhile, he started doing his own research and what needs to be done and all that. So what he saw during his holiday in 4 months was that a lot of these European cities were having this riverfront development. All the development, the city looked beautiful around the riverfront. So when he came to Hyderabad, the first thing he proposed in his report, apart from the flood protection measures, was that Hyderabad should have a riverfront. That's how you got all those big buildings
So
along
it has
the
a
riverfront.
Parisian touch, and it explains. This book
Exactly.
explains why Hyderabad. If you go near Hussain Sagar Lake or
No, the Musi
in the
side.
Musi River, there is a certain Parisian touch in this experience. And I personally think this book is significant for one very important sense because it's very controversial today to say anything nice about the British or the Nizam period, and because we now have this current political and UP-centric view of Mughal and British era, and Congress party also has itself to play. What is forgotten is that apart from the historians like Shashi Tharoor or William Dalrymple, everybody speaks about the economic exploitation of India, which is a fact, and the political domination, which is also a fact. But what is often lost in this is that the British colonial period and the late Mughal period, in fact, coincided also with enlightenment in Europe, the rise of science and technology, and the Industrial Revolution. And the British Raj brought to India not only the political masters or the economic exploiters, but also a wonderful bunch of teachers, scientists, preachers, whose history is often lost in the noise over politics and economics. This book brings that out. It's a people's history of Hyderabad in a way. This and therefore modern India, which I find fascinating.
And also the mainline historians. I mean, I'm not a student of history or not a trained historian, but I'm told that the princely state, whatever was happening in princely state, was somewhat neglected because the British wanted to always show them in their regalia and all that. So the modern side of princely state, there were 4 or 5 of them which were very progressive. One was Hyderabad,
you are now drawing me.
then Baroda, princely, then Travancore, and of course Mysore. These were the 5 states which
Yeah,
are modern outlook, which had rulers, which had heavy influence. That was kind of lost in this British
exactly. That's
showcasing
something
of,
very, very. It's a corrective work of history. It's not revisionist. It actually gives a certain accuracy to it. In fact, we'll be digressing, but let's say, for instance, the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore was built by Maharaja's funding with the British.
Absolutely.
But my favorite character in this book, although there are favorite characters, because I told you I read it like a novel, Mehboob Pasha. He's a decadent Nizam who died at the age of 45 with wine, women, and song. But he was fond of science and technology and education. He funded a lot of money. And how can you link? This is the kind of stuff that fascinates me. In fact, there's a lot of favorite characters in this book. Maybe you have to add something as a.
Well,
diplomacy.
for the benefit especially of people who are watching online, I want to read one small paragraph because it is fascinating. One small paragraph from the book. No? So it's actually the opening paragraph. The city of Nawabs and biryani. That is the common stereotype attached to Hyderabad. Ever since the first low cost airline appeared in 2003, with no meals provided on board, it has been a running joke that any aircraft taking off from Hyderabad has the enticing aroma of the rice and meat dish wafting it up in the in the skies. After all, so many passengers bring along packs of biryani to eat on the flight. I do too. I bring it to eat at home after coming back to Delhi. Even as airlines now serve food on board, for many travelers, the biryani wins hands down in comparison to the add water and wait to eat meals. Fascinating paragraph, but I read it out because I want to ask Dinesh a question. You know, all of us have at some point or other in our early careers been wordsmiths on writing headlines. You know, I mean, writing headlines is an art. It's really and truly an art because if you write a bad headline, nobody is going to read the article, howsoever good it is. But a good catchy headline makes all the difference. So, Dinesh, how did you come to this title, Beyond Biryani? Because I mean, a lot of the actually much of the book is not about biryani.
Let me add also a tantalizing question. No, you argued well that Hyderabad biryani is the most popular. And there's a lot of science in this book. So is there a science to why Hyderabad biryani tastes better?
Yeah, but how did you arrive at this title? What was the process that brought you to this title?
I think so.
Maybe Kartika should pitch in. She is here. No, but the point which I wanted to drive home was that what are the things for which Hyderabad has a pan-India recall?
Mm.
And it used to be Golconda and Charminar a few years back. And of course, Pulse have always been associated with Hyderabad. And of late, post-liberalization, particularly last 20, 25 years, since biryani got commoditized, it became product. So this name recall has got attached with Hyderabad, and there are a couple of reasons for that. Not only the people from all over India are getting into there, people from Hyderabad are also going out. So they take their food habits out, and those who come and want to enjoy the local food habits, or they assimilate with the local food habits. And biryani kind of became a cultural symbol, and also the way it's always been there, but it was never sold like a product. So that kind of gave it a brand. Suppose there's somebody going from North India, and there are lots of them who recently migrated in 10 to 15 years. So they always think, yeah, Hyderabad means biryani. And of course, the numbers will tell you that they're the largest selling
Yeah, that
brand.
is a
But
fascinating
it's
statistic.
a,
Because he's a scientist and the journalist, he also backs up all these biryani claims with hard data. It reminds me of
yeah.
Narayan
So
Murthy, who says, "In data, we just told, in God we trust, the others bring data to the table."
So to answer Mr. Nayar's question, that was the reason I wanted to tell that okay, there's a lot more to the city than biryani. But somehow I'm finding that in all the discussions, biryani becomes the central point.
Yeah, but that's a nice way. It's a PhD in science communication, sounding like a good advertising creative director in arriving at the time. I suspect Kartika might have played a role in that biryanification of the title, but it smells good. But let me come to some core factoids which fascinated me, which kind of tells you still as to why this book is important. First of all, there are fascinating characters in this book. Uh, I could watch it mentally, like watching. In fact, I have this proposal. I'm planning to share this book concept and detail some things with my filmmaker friends like Sudhir Mishra or Nikhil Advani, who made Rocket Boys, and he's now had Freedom at Midnight. So this can actually deserve a web series or something like that, or even inspire a fictional kind of thing like Hira Mandi, like Sanjay Leela Bhansali, because I'm also a watcher of historical biopic. It kind of there's a lot of research gone into this. Publisher, please note. The point is that I am going to throw some very interesting factoids which will give you, who knows, an alternate view of history, Indian history. For instance, Sir Ronald Ross, who discovered the malarial parasite and saved probably millions of lives across the planet, including India, was born in Almora in India in the same year as the First War of Independence, 1857. So you can almost imagine that while the British were trampling upon India at one level and taking territory, there was another Britisher, which is why you can't stereotype British Raj. So you have Sir Ronald Ross, after whom a road is named in Hyderabad. So there are the cynics who say, the British were discovering scientific stuff for their own good and all that. But it's benefited humanity, and Hyderabad and Ronald Ross had a role to play in it. That's one fact which I want to share, which comes out. So there's a lot about malaria and how Hyderabad played a role in combating malaria in the history of public health. In fact, I have half a mind to become a publisher and compete with Westland and get Dinesh to write the next book. I've got the idea in the head. The next thing I want to say is this book also has another fascinating factoid, which is that 100 years ago, we had a woman scientist, Rupa Boy Faridunj, who was a woman scientist. Even today in Silicon Valley, women in science have to cluster and say, we are women, we are scientists. You had 100 years ago in Hyderabad, a cutting-edge woman scientist called Rupa Bai Faridunji, who not only went to Edinburgh to study, and do you know that Hyderabad played a key role in the use of chloroform in anesthetic surgery worldwide, right? So today, going to a surgery and getting chloroform or anesthesia is as easy as buying bread. But Hyderabad and this woman scientist played a key role in this. She deserves a biography of her own. That's one thing I want to say. The other interesting thing that jumped on me, apart from Sir Ronald Roy and Rupa, Rupa Boy and Sir Ronald Ross, is that you could do an MBBS in Urdu from Usmania University. It was India's first vernacular university, but just imagine, they used to joke in Urdu, MBBS stands for Mia Bibi Bachcho Sameet. But actually, you could, Urdu is seen as a language of poetry and romance, and thanks to the partition, it's seen as by some people as alien. But the progressive Nizamite worldview on education and the collaboration with British resulted in a vernacular and Urdu education and MBBS, which you just cannot think of. So it's modern education. It's post-enlightenment, post-scientific. That's another thing that jumped at me from this book. And there's a story that comes out from there. I can go on and on, but I will just say two more things before coming to the next question. Another thing which fascinated me is that did you know that India was making semiconductors in the 1970s and in Hyderabad with ECIL, Electronics Corporation of India? Because I knew they were making some electronic products that we used to make even a TV in the 80s. But semiconductors being made in India and in Hyderabad, now I know there's a listed company out of Hyderabad called Moschip Semiconductor. But there is a precedent to that, so it was always cutting edge in that sense. That's another fact. And what I like about Dinesh is the way he talks about how ECIL was allotted 1,200 acres of land near a Sufi shrine that goes back. Look at the poetic way he brings semiconductors into the history of the Nizam. And that takes a science journalist becoming a journalist, with a historian with a storytelling ability, which is why I feel this book will be a filmmaker's delight. And let me come now to a question which is more like a statement, but there are some fascinating characters in this book. You mentioned Sayyid Akbar Hydari. I'm wondering if he's an ancestor of Aditi Rao. I think
Related.
they are related, who is a Bollywood actor. There is also Yellagada Subbarao. I have a feeling he's related to Ramat Subbarao, who used to play cricket for UK. I don't know.
He didn't have.
I don't know. But there is, the stereotyping of Muslims today is about UP and bulldozers and all. But there's a number of characters in this book who show what the Nehruvian India was all about, a collaboration between highly educated uh, uh, Muslims and Hindus in a very secure or syncretic composite sense. You have characters like Syed Hussein
Zahir.
Zahir. You have, you mentioned Bukhari. Then there is S. Fariduddin. And there are others who are, Fariduddin was part of Homi Baba's, what we could call the Rocket Boys project. And Hyderabad became a key center of atomic facilities, being partly located out of Hyderabad instead of Bombay. And Fariduddin played a role in that. So these are characters that show that India, which is kind of nearly forgotten in the kind of political noise that is being made in India today. And this book is very important for that. In fact, these characters in themselves, for me, it was like watching Sham Benegal, mentally watching something like Sham Benegal's Bharati Coach based on Discovery of India. You could say it's a discovery of modern Hyderabad in that sense. So you want to add something to this? I'm fascinated by how the state institutions played a major role in the rise of private sector giants, which is often forgotten in this whole RRL. Maybe you want to talk on that?
Yeah, before I do that, Rupabai, I'm still researching, and as you said, there could be a bigger
She at least deserves a
biography.
Google doodle.
Absolutely, no. So I'm going to write more about her because very little is known other than what I have written. So I'm trying to do that. Also, I'm working on Zahir and his contribution, and it's a very fascinating personality that he was born in UP, a member of the Congress Party. He was an elected MLA from the university constituency in 1937, and he worked with Jayaprakash Narayan, Lohiya, and the Young Turks of Congress.
That's interesting. I didn't know
And,
this.
yeah, so there is a complete,
And lovely
person,
photos
yeah.
inside this book that kind of makes your imagination, triggers your imagination to write a
So
script.
I was myself fascinated with many of the personalities about whom I write. So
There's also Rao, who with the electronic voting machine.
EVR Rao. Yeah, yeah. So that's one. But the larger question which you raised about the role of the state and the role of public sector. See, if you look at Hyderabad, you remember that it is good for IT and for biotechnology. And when you go back and look at the roads from where did those skills, those knowledge, and those ideas came for it to become big in what we see today. I mean, you don't find a PSU working in IT today, or even in biotechnology or pharmaceutical industry. But the roots are in the PSU. I mean, you rightly said CIL and IDPL.
In fact, Computer Maintenance
Yeah,
Corporation,
CMC,
which became
yeah.
CMC Limited, was acquired by the Tatas,
Yeah.
but very few remember that Hyderabad had a role in
Yes,
CMC, and CMC was a global pioneer in online ticket booking.
yes.
Because I was actually meeting people from CMC those days, and um, we didn't. I have. You have another book on IT that you have written, but I was also part. I've spoken. I've heard Shiv Nada speak on this. In the 1980s, Indian IT was as progressed as Silicon Valley, except that these people didn't even know how to take a company to Nasdaq. It took Narayan Murthy another 15 years to do that. Otherwise, India could have. There are a lot of references to. For instance, there is a reference to Ashok Narasimhan here, who was with Wipro, and Ashok Narasimhan was, if I recollect, one of the earliest funders of a mobile messenger at a time when there was no WhatsApp, or there was even Yahoo Messenger had a competitor. So it's just that sometimes scientists and technologists miss the commercial boat because you're in a different country. So those things are also there. Yeah. And the
So,
state played a major role in terms of R&D
Yeah.
powering. RRL, regional
research
laboratory
True.
gave rise to, let's say,
Yeah.
Dr. Reddy's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Dr. Reddy was working in IDPL.
IDPL,
Today
sorry.
we look at IDPL as a loss-making unit and they are not done. But the real contribution of IDPL was generating that basic knowledge and basic talent which could move to the private sector. I mean, you take the top 10 pharmaceutical industries in Hyderabad today, starting with Dr. Reddy and Hetero and everybody, they all have their roots somewhere into IDPL. Dr.
Yeah.
Reddy himself was working in IDPL, and from his company, he vacated several other companies.
Yeah,
and that's
just
a
as
chain
Wipro,
reaction.
Wipro is considered a mother of IT entrepreneurs in India, and IDPL is a mother of pharma entrepreneurs and government state leaders. So much so that I'm thinking of recommending this book to us, well-known economist in University College London, who's talking about the myth of private and
Absolutely.
public sector being competitors. In fact, even the iPhone was made with help from state technologies, which is often not seen because everybody thinks that you take technology from the public sector, take it to the market, and then you curse the public sector. This is fashionable these days everywhere.
So
There
that
are economists working on this, and this book would help them also.
because that is the larger takeaway, I suppose, because you can't look at the contribution of an institution in terms of numbers alone. Numbers in the sense of production, numbers in the sense of profit and all, but they helped in many ways. That's what I have tried to bring out in both IDPL, both in IT as well as biotechnology and pharmaceutical. That was the contribution and the role of the research labs, the way they connected, and everything is interconnected, and those linkages are forgotten even in today's world. But that's what I have tried to bring in. And if you look at the pharmaceutical industry, people refer to it in a very negative sense. Okay, it's all reverse engineering, but it's not easy to reverse engineering in water. It calls for a lot of expertise. You not only have to a new process which is different from the process which is in public domain, and do that and have a production unit to make that molecule with a new process. All that calls for skills, and that has gone into the making of Genome Valley, the making of Hyderabad as a pharmacy hub, and we refer to the pharmacy of the world, India, and within India, Hyderabad contributes a lot of pharmaceutical manufacturing in that. So all those skills were moving between the labs to MSMEs and to PSU. So that
To use
whole
the-
ecosystem.
Yeah,
was developed.
I was
That
going to come to
the-
that. The word is ecosystem.
yeah.
Hyderabad had the knowledge ecosystem followed by the state-led ecosystem for regulation and coordination. Excuse me. So from Hyderabad to Cyberabad and Genome Valley is a journey that actually says how various kinds of, as you yourself put it in your intro, it's about people, it's about processes, it's about principles also, how state, it kind of sort of, this book gives us, because everybody now flashbacks into too much of history. You go back 5,000 years and it's this and that, and but this one goes back only 50 years and 100 years and reveals so much that, these are important steps in evolution of India, about evolution of science. So, Venkat, you want to add to that? Yeah.
Questions?
Hyderabad is that, of course, the scientific research labs. So there are 200 research labs
Exactly, that's right.
there. 800 companies involved in this, and million people are employed by the IT industry. Now, the pharmaceutical industry. Now, Hyderabad has become, a major center, the pharmacy of the world. 50% of the exports, medical medicines to the world, are from Hyderabad.
That's what he explained.
And another thing is the emergence of Hyderabad as a filmmaking center.
Yeah, in fact, we spent 1 hour without mentioning Bahubali.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Bahubali, RRR, and Pushpa, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Pushpa 2, it is going to be released 1 month later, but it has already made 1,000 crores rupees worth of business. This is amazing.
In fact, it is not very well known that Isaac Asimov's science fiction work Nightfall was made into a movie with graphic and animation work done out of Hyderabad. because it was the early days. When you're doing something very early, people don't notice it because it's, you're not expecting it. So, but Hyderabad did it. I don't think it figures in this book, but maybe that's another sequel that you
Yeah,
should
that's
write
true.
about how Hyderabad.
Mentioned about Chota Bheem and some
Yeah,
cartoon
Chota Bheem.
companies, but I have not gone into the
Yeah,
details.
Nightfall, because they at that time it was seen as part of the outsourcing and cost-cutting story that you could actually do a Hollywood movie. There is Tata Elxsi in Mumbai, which is doing a lot of Hollywood work, but before that, Hyderabad did it, and
Yeah, a lot of
Avatar and all that. But Nightfall was one of the early things that happened in Hyderabad because everybody at that time was looking at it in terms of you can do for 1,000 rupees in Hyderabad what you do for $1,000 in the US. But look at the amount of knowledge, science, and technology that goes into it. That is often being forgotten, and that's why you need this kind of a book, which kind of sketches out some of the details. So, can go on and on about this, but I'd love to see audience asking any questions or making an observation because, hmm? Yeah, in fact, honestly speaking, I was thinking this morning while thinking this book has been my girlfriend for the past 3 days. And I was thinking of Emal Jaisimha and, Abbas Ali Beg and in fact, Saad bin Jung. In fact, Salar Jung is a character in this. I call this a novel as far as I'm concerned. So Salar Jung, from that family, the Jung family is very kind of very prominent. So
Even
cricket has.
Hyderabad FC football team now.
Hmm?
Hyderabad FC football team. They are
Yeah, I
passing
don't
to
know about the
ISL.
football part of Hyderabad. As I said, there is more to discover. In fact, I have to share my own story about Hyderabad because I used to stay deliberately in Quality Inn, which is down Banjara Hill, because it was a simple hotel. I liked that. It wasn't swanky, but it gave me a lot of access to both inside city and into the swanky Banjara Hill, so I could be a good journalist, go as down or as up as possible. And they used to say, this gym is owned by Azharuddin. That's my cricket collection. But that apart, what I liked was that it was located in an area called African Central Guards. It was called AC Guard. You go to Hyderabad, they'll tell you it's AC Guard. Then I said, what does AC stand for? They said it's African Central Guards. Why? Because the Nizam had got people from Hyderabad, Africa, as his guards. So you have, in fact, when I went to cover the president of Iran's visit to Hyderabad, President Rafsanjani, I think at that time, and I was sitting next to people who I thought were Hyderabadi. Of course, they were a little fair-skinned, and they stood up and welcomed the Iranian president in chaste Persian, saying "Khosh Ahmadid," and all. And then suddenly they lapse into local Dakhni language. You know, Kirak is that word.
Yemenis also.
Yemeni. So this is why I say that Hyderabad was globalized before the word globalization became hip in the West. Just as Nehru used the word diversity before it became a corporate word in America. So I have researched and written about that. But the Africans and the Yemenis and the Persians and the Turks, Arabs. So, even words like Bilgrani, research if you research a word like Farnavis, it takes you back to Persia. If you take a word like Bilgrami, it probably takes you to Kohinoor. So what I'm trying to say is that, I was coming to the point that uh, AC Guard shows that there is a certain part of Hyderabad's history, apart from cricket that you mentioned, that needs to be explored and written about. In fact, I half expected a bit of that, but this is very understandably focused on. It's actually a very serious work, but written in an enchanting way. It's very researched, but if you want to take what I might call a Dalrymplean approach, or a Suketu Mehta's approach to, like say Maximum City in Mumbai, or there are books written on Delhi, you could actually write a very popular uh, history of Hyderabad, bringing in everything from cricket to, some of the buildings You can maybe title it as Falaknuma to Facebook or something like that. Because Facebook and Amazon, everybody is there in Hyderabad now. Yeah. Was there a question, Vajir? You said. Acha. Yeah, I don't know about the football, I must say. Yeah, we haven't even mentioned badminton and Sindhu, and even Saina Nehwal is from Hyderabad. So we can go on and on, but this is focused on the science, technology, government, and some of the modern historical aspects. So I'm sure Dinesh will do justice to another book like this. Or someone. Anybody else?
Artika, would you like? Please come.
What is your future of Hyderabad? What is your prognosis for the city?
No, I think it's all set to grow, as we say. But looking in the framework of what I have gone into this book, it's been a talent city. As we know, we refer to India as a talent country. Companies come here for talent, and that has led to a lot of job creation, wealth creation, and what we see. And that's one stream to go further, which they're going further in both the cities are going ahead in that direction. But we need to become a technology or IP country in the sense we generate the IP. Like we have hundreds of these global capability centers for the MNCs, where we are developing technologies for MNCs. We are also good at technology use and applications, but the next stage should be technology development and the IP creation, so that we become technology giants in our own right, instead of working for others, and which is not something bad. As I said, it leads to a lot of employment creation. It leads to creation of cities like Cyberabad, and it leads to a lot of wealth creation. It's a wonderful thing, and it has a spillover effect in terms of local technology development. A lot of people have come out of early stages from Texas Instruments, and they have become entrepreneurs in their own way. And the reason that we are a silicon design country today is because of TIA and other pioneers who came in the 80s. So it has a spillover effect, but the next stage would be to become a technology
Yeah, in fact,
where we create our own IP.
I have to add that,
one can-
a lot of IP has been created in Bangalore and Hyderabad. Unfortunately, they are not registered in Indian names. So for instance, I knew as a correspondent was for Reuters in Bangalore that Philips was sitting next to the Ulsur Lake in Bangalore. There were 23 PhDs working for Philips, filing patents uh, for Philips in Netherlands, sitting in India with Indian scientists. Today, for instance, I remember covering in the late 90s, there was a company called I2, which was a supply chain technology company, which CEO from Sandeep Sithu from Hyderabad Public School, who again, so many of the Hyderabad generated intellectual property or leadership is now officially, technically American, and even the owners sometimes are green card or Indian American citizens. So they are about, the patents are about as Indian as Kamala Harris is Indian. So, to that extent, what we need, in fact, this is a slightly controversial point I want to make today. I can't resist this today, which is that a lot of investment in Indians on the R&D side is being made by financiers from Wall Street or Canada or Silicon Valley, where the Indians are putting their own money more in things like ports and airports and power plants, which help them make money. Nobody is putting Indian money into Indian R&D to get Indian patents, and the patents and the talent generated in public sector is not being properly documented and accounted for, which is what this book is all about, as to how a lot of good work, great work happened in the public sector under the Nizam or in Nehru's India, which kind of powered up some of the most familiar names today, which can be in medicine or in IT. Yes, ma'am.
Sir, good evening. I'm Sumi Khan from Dhaka, Bangladesh. I'm a member of here, also working with INS. I have visited Hyderabad last 2-3 years back. I visited the museum, Safdarjung. It was really amazing. And you named I have two questions. One question is, I'm really impressed your name, beyond your name of your book, Beyond Biryani, the making of a globalized Hyderabad. And you truly said that Sardar Jang, it, truly I have seen, and every room, every part of the museum shows that how can it possible so many long years back, every symbol, every part, every piece from world everywhere, so modern was, but presently I have seen so radicalized Hyderabad and all the, I'm also from Muslim family, very secular Muslim family, but I have seen uh, little baby also with hijab, makeup. So it is, I think, dark. It is going dark. How can it be actually possible? It will be possible to bring them out from this. It is a question, and about this name. And this is truly, I would love to read this book and to write on this.
It's a very
Thank you,
interesting,
sir.
very good question, Rhythm, because this book is important and your question is equally important. That's why let me step in before the says, because I'm very passionate about this topic. You know, every country goes through phases. You are from Bangladesh, you know. I've been to Bangladesh when Sheikh Hasina was elected first time in '96, and I have my own memories there. I met her. But so every country goes through phases. You know, my friend Salim Tripathi has written this book called The Colonel Who Won't Repent, about how the Jamaat-e-Islami is still strong in Bangladesh. So just as like Dhaka, Hyderabad also has various aspects and phases of history. So the phase of history that you speak about is actually filmed beautifully by Sagar Sarnadi in Bazaar, which is about almost about trafficking of women in some ways. So, infamous episode where an air hostess of Indian Airlines rescued a little girl called Amira or Mina, who was married off to an old Arab millionaire, sheikh, because money makes a social impact, whether it is biryani or child marriage. So what you need is a progressive elite which will or an consciousness. So today there is a movie called Rasakar made, which is a propaganda movie, but not without element of truth. Whereas there is another documentary filmmaker of mine, friend of mine, Gautam Pemraj from Hyderabad, who's talked about Dakhni poetry. In fact, I'm not even a Hyderabadi, and there's so much I know about Hyderabad's history. The important point to remember is that every country or culture, even the US today, goes through highs and lows. And objectively, we should look at both so that we understand that every culture, country can regress or progress. This book is about a very progressive phase of Hyderabad. The question is about a regressive phase. As the bureaucrats say, it's not a question, it's a suggestion for action.
That one sentence, because I fully endorse what my friend Madhvan has said. I mentioned somewhere in a similar session that what is fascinating about Hyderabad is there's, I mean, no Tri-City, no Old Hyderabad, Secunderabad, and Cyberabad.
Hyderabad.
So I said this is the fascinating aspect of Hyderabad, where the medieval part, there's a modern part, there's a postmodern part, which is Cyberabad, which you feel as if you're in Singapore or somewhere else. So, and what is interesting is they are talking to each other. These three cities, there's constant interaction. There are people from Old City working in the Cyberabad area, or people from Secunderabad. So they may look as separate, but they're always talking to each other. So it is and as famously foreigners who come to India say that India lives in different centuries. So Hyderabad lives in a medieval part, there's a modern part, and postmodern, but changes are happening in all the three constantly.
In
So
fact,
what you observed is right, and
In
that's the
fact,
explanation.
I have so much to tell you that like my memory is triggered because I went to meet the so-called Maoist poet Gadar in Hyderabad, and now his son was actually working on a PC. This guy was not even wearing a shirt, wearing a dhoti, and talking to me. He was considered close to Naxalite. Just 2.5 hours away from Hyderabad, you'll find Maoists, and I remember meeting K.J. Kannapiran, who's a human rights activist in Secunderabad. So what you can see is that Maoism, progressive Nizamism, Nehruism, modern Facebook style capitalism, everything coexists in Hyderabad. That's why this book is interesting. And it's a way of, this book is a window to so many faces of Hyderabad and time zones. So that's what makes it interesting. So I hope Dhaka will learn a lesson or two from Hyderabad.
That is when Nehru called Hyderabad the Sangam of Indian culture. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Dinesh, and thank you, Madhavan, for this fascinating discussion on this book. Let us hope that the next Google, Indian Google, will come out of Hyderabad, and there is beyond biryani. To make that really happen, we got Hyderabadi biryani, and Pandey, please stand up. He has brought Hyderabadi biryani for you. Make sure you collect your packet. And
See, in IT, there is something called packet switching.
Okay.
Now, this has a whole new meaning to packet switching. In telecom, these are like private jokes between people. Like, Dinesh is a soulmate that way. We have one foot in history and foot and another foot in science and technology, and we love to join all the dots.
and this doesn't really normally happen, but I just said biryani. All right, let's give a treat of biryani, Hyderabadi biryani too. And
I hope this will be on YouTube. No?
yes,
It will be
is.
interesting
And,
to.
this is a memento. Dinesh. Madhavan.
Oh, thank you. Is that a biryani?
Biryani is outside. Biryani is outside.
Sadly, I've been cheated.
Very happy to autograph the books. And make sure you collect your packet of biryani. And thank you, Paradise Biryani, and thank you, Pandey, for making this happen. Thank you.
Yeah.